One evening, after a particularly tense week, they sat together in silence, the air heavy with frustration. Finally, Wei Lun spoke. I don't want us to lose this. I don't want the world to take it away. Liang Chen looked at him, his chest tight. We won't. Because we'll keep choosing each other. No matter what. The words carried the weight of promise, a quiet vow that their love would endure. As months passed, they found ways to adapt. Liang Chen began to carve out more time for Wei Lun, learning to say no to endless demands at work. Wei Lun, in turn, found new strategies to strengthen the cafe, drawing inspiration from their shared experiences. They supported each other, encouraged each other, and reminded each other of what mattered. One evening, as they sat together in the cafe after closing, Wei Lun handed Liang Chen a pastry he had created just for him, a tart filled with black sesame custard, topped with candied ginger. It's inspired by you, he said softly. Strong, steady, but with a spark of warmth. Liang Chen took a bite, overwhelmed by the gesture. It's perfect, he said. Just like you. Wei Lun smiled, his eyes shining. We're perfect together. The moment was quiet, but it carried the weight of promise. They both knew that their love was not fleeting, it was lasting, meant to grow. And though challenges remained, family expectations, financial strain, career crossroads, they knew one thing for certain. They were in this together. The months that followed were some of the most challenging yet defining for Liang Chen and Wei Lun. The pressures of family expectations, financial strain, and career crossroads weighed heavily on them, but instead of pulling them apart, these challenges forged their bond into something stronger, more resilient. Wei Lun's cafe remained precarious. Some weeks were encouraging, with new customers drawn in by word of mouth or social media posts, but others were painfully quiet. He often worried late into the night, calculating expenses, wondering if he could keep the dream alive. Liang Chen, though unfamiliar with the world of small business, offered his support in every way he could, helping brainstorm promotions, connecting Wei Lun with acquaintances who might spread the word, even volunteering to hand out flyers during weekends. One Saturday morning, as they stood outside the cafe together, Liang Chen handed a flyer to a passerby and laughed. I never thought I'd be doing this, he admitted. Wei Lun smiled, his eyes warm. Neither did I. But it means everything to me that you're here. The moment was simple, but it carried the weight of partnership. They were in this together, facing the world side by side. Meanwhile, Liang Chen's career reached a crossroads. His firm continued to push him toward promotion, urging him to take on more responsibility. The offer was tempting, prestige, higher pay, recognition, but it came with a cost. Longer hours, less time for Wei Lun, less room for the life he was building outside of work. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony, Liang Chen spoke quietly. I don't know if I can do it. The promotion would mean more money, more status. But it would also mean less of this. Less of us. Wei Lun looked at him, his expression steady. Then don't take it. Money and status don't matter if they take away your happiness. Liang Chen hesitated. My parents would be disappointed. They've always wanted me to climb higher, to keep achieving. Wei Lun reached for his hand, holding it tightly. And what do you want? The question lingered, heavy with truth. Liang Chen realized that for the first time in his life, he wanted something beyond career, beyond success. He wanted love, companionship, joy. He wanted Wei Lun. The decision wasn't easy, but in the end, he turned down the promotion. His parents were disappointed, but Liang Chen stood firm. I'm choosing my life, he told them. Not just my career. The choice marked a turning point. It was a declaration, not just to his parents but to himself, that love mattered more than ambition. As they navigated these challenges, their conversations began to turn more concretely toward the future. Marriage, once a distant idea, became a topic they discussed openly. One evening, as they walked along the Tamsui River, Wei Lun spoke softly. Do you ever imagine what it would be like? Us married. Liang Chen smiled, his eyes warm. I do. More than I thought I would. Wei Lun chuckled. I used to think marriage was just a formality. But now, I think it's a way of saying, this is forever. Liang Chen nodded. That's what I want. Forever. The words carried the weight of promise, a quiet acknowledgement that their love was not fleeting, it was lasting, meant to grow. Their families, though still adjusting, began to soften. Liang Chen's parents, though cautious, saw the happiness in their son's eyes and began to accept Wei Lun as part of his life. Wei Lun's family, supportive from the start, welcomed Liang Chen more fully, recognizing the steadiness he brought to their son's world. Together, they began to envision a shared future. They talked about living in a larger apartment, about expanding the cafe, about finding ways to balance law and pastries. They dreamed of traveling together, Paris, Tokyo, New York, places that had shaped their lives and their passions. One evening, as they sat together in the cafe after closing, Wei Lun handed Liang Chen a pastry he had created just for him, a delicate tart filled with oolong custard, topped with candied orange peel. It's inspired by us, he said softly. The tea is grounding, steady. The orange peel adds brightness, spark. Together, they balance. Liang Chen took a bite, overwhelmed by the gesture. It's perfect, he said, just like us. Wei Lun smiled, his eyes shining. Then let's keep building this. Let's make it last. The moment was quiet, but it carried the weight of promise. They both knew that marriage was no longer just an idea. It was a future they were moving toward, step by step, moment by moment. And though challenges remained, family expectations, financial strain, career crossroads, they knew one thing for certain. They were in this together. By the time their second year together began, Liang Chen and Wei Lun had built a life that felt both ordinary and extraordinary. To outsiders, they were simply two men sharing an apartment, balancing careers, and navigating daily routines. But to them, every moment carried the weight of love, of resilience, of the quiet promise they had made to keep choosing each other. Their intimacy had deepened in ways that surprised them both. It wasn't just about affection, it was about vulnerability, about sharing fears and dreams, about allowing themselves to be seen fully. Liang Chen, once reserved and cautious, found himself opening up more than he ever had before. He spoke of his doubts, his insecurities, his fear of failure. Wei Lun listened with patience, offering comfort without judgment. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony, Liang Chen spoke softly. Do you ever wonder if we're strong enough to face everything? The cafe, my career, our families, sometimes it feels overwhelming. Wei Lun leaned against him, their shoulders touching. I don't wonder, he said gently, because I know. We've already faced so much, and we're still here. That's strength. The words carried a weight that eased Liang Chen's doubts. He realized that love wasn't about avoiding challenges, it was about facing them together, about resilience, about persistence. Their shared dreams began to take shape more clearly. They talked about expanding the cafe, about finding a larger apartment, about traveling together. Paris was at the top of Wei Lun's list, a city that had shaped his craft and his passion. Liang Chen, though less adventurous, found himself excited by the idea. I want to see it with you, he admitted one evening. Not just the city, but the way you see it. Wei Lun smiled, his eyes shining. Then we'll go. One day. They also began to talk more concretely about marriage. The idea had lingered in their conversations for months, but now it carried a new weight. One evening, as they cooked dinner together, Wei Lun spoke softly. Do you ever imagine what our wedding would be like? Liang Chen paused, chopsticks in hand, then smiled. I do. I imagine something simple. Just us, our families, our friends. Nothing grand, just love. Wei Lun chuckled. That's exactly what I want. The conversation was brief, but it carried the weight of promise. They both knew that marriage was no longer just an idea. It was a future they were moving toward, step by step, moment by moment. Their love was expressed in small gestures. Liang Chen began leaving notes for Wei Lun, simple messages tucked into cookbooks or left on the counter. Good luck today, one read. I love you, another said. Wei Lun, in turn, created pastries inspired by their relationship, offering them with quiet smiles. Each gesture was a reminder that love was not about grand declarations. It was about presence, about care, about remembering. One evening, as they sat together in the cafe after closing, Wei Lun handed Liang Chen a pastry he had created just for him, a delicate tart filled with oolong custard, topped with candied orange peel. "It's inspired by us," he said softly. "The tea is grounding, steady. The orange peel adds brightness, spark. Together, they balance." Liang Chen took a bite, overwhelmed by the gesture. "It's perfect," he said. "Just like us." Wei Lun smiled, his eyes shining. "Then let's keep building this. Let's make it last." The moment was quiet, but it carried the weight of promise. They both knew that marriage was no longer just a dream. It was a future they were moving toward, step by step, moment by moment. Life together had settled into a rhythm that felt both comforting and alive. Liang Chen and Wei Lun had grown accustomed to each other's habits. The way Wei Lun hummed softly while baking, the way Liang Chen read late into the night, the way they both instinctively reached for each other's hands when walking through crowded streets. These small routines became the fabric of their intimacy, weaving their lives together in ways that felt permanent. Yet with deeper intimacy came new challenges. The cafe, though slowly gaining recognition, remained financially fragile. Some weeks were encouraging, with customers lining up for Wei Lun's creations, but others were painfully quiet. Liang Chen often worried about the toll it took on him. "You're working yourself too hard," he said one evening, watching Wei Lun knead dough with weary hands. Wei Lun smiled faintly. "It's my dream. I can't give up on it." Liang Chen reached for his hand, stopping him gently. "Dreams are worth fighting for, but not at the cost of your health. Let me help more." Wei Lun looked at him, his eyes softening. "You already do. Just being here makes it easier." The words carried a weight that Liang Chen felt deeply. He realized that love wasn't about fixing everything, it was about presence, about standing beside someone even when the world felt heavy. Meanwhile, Liang Chen faced his own struggles. His career remained demanding, and though he had turned down the promotion, the workload was still relentless. There were nights when exhaustion left him barely able to speak, when he collapsed onto the couch and simply leaned against Wei Lun, finding solace in his quiet presence. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Liang Chen admitted, "Sometimes I wonder if I'm strong enough to balance this, my career, your cafe, us." Wei Lun leaned against him, their shoulders touching. "You don't have to be strong alone. That's what we're here for, together." The reassurance eased Liang Chen's doubts. He realized that love wasn't about perfection, it was about resilience, about persistence, about choosing each other even when life was difficult. Their conversations began to turn more seriously toward marriage. The idea had lingered for months, but now it carried a new urgency. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony, Wei Lun spoke softly. "Do you ever think about when we should do it? Not just if, but when." Liang Chen paused, then smiled. "I do. I think about it more than I admit. I want it to be right, not rushed, not forced. Just us at the right time." Wei Lun chuckled. "Timing again. It seems to be the theme of our lives." Liang Chen nodded. "Because timing matters. We met at the right time, when we were ready. And when we marry, it should be the same." The conversation was brief, but it carried the weight of promise. They both knew that marriage was no longer just a dream. It was a future they were moving toward, step by step, moment by moment. Their love was expressed in small gestures that carried profound meaning. Liang Chen began leaving notes for Wei Lun, simple messages tucked into cookbooks or left on the counter. "Good luck today," one read. "I love you," another said. Wei Lun, in turn, created pastries inspired by their relationship, offering them with quiet smiles. Each gesture was a reminder that love was not about grand declarations. It was about presence, about care, about remembering.